Once you get past the rules of D&D, the social aspect of playing the game, and just getting a group together in the first place, the most difficult part of D&D for a lot of people is role-playing. Yeah, even if it's in the name, role-playing game, role-playing itself can be really difficult. It's nerve-wracking. Putting yourself in the spotlight like that, improving a character, making them believable yet fun, can be hard. Even if I'm not a perfect role player, I still have a little bit of advice to give. Whether you are a DM wanting to give more depth to your NPCs or a player looking to RP out a new character, here is just a little bit of advice for better roleplay in Dungeons and Dragons. Okay, before we get into the actual role-playing advice, here's a quick note for dungeon masters and sort of players too. Look, you cannot force people to roleplay. It won't happen. Pressuring people into RPing is a terrible idea. It has to be something that people come to naturally, that your players come to naturally. And this advice does go to players too. I have seen parties who get frustrated when a new player isn't RPing as much, which is just counterproductive. Pressuring someone into doing something will ensure that they don't have fun while doing it. And as I've said multiple times, having fun is the #1 priority. There are things that DMs can do to encourage roleplay, such as rewarding creative solutions or giving inspiration points for really good scenes. But again, these are encouragements. You cannot force interesting roleplay. If nothing else, make sure to take that away from this video, as I've seen multiple campaigns made at the very least very awkward, and at the very worst, completely ruined because players or DMs get frustrated when there's not enough RP happening in the game. Okay, now with that out of the way, let's get to actual roleplay advice. First and foremost, it's really hard to play a character you don't fully understand. Now that sounds silly. I wrote this character, this player character, this NPC, of course I understand it. Well, I said that too, but really I just understood the idea of my character, the general story. For example, my first NPC that I introduced in my current home game, I had an idea for him, a charming yet serious hunter, but that general idea was really hard for me to RP out. By that point, I had experience, so I was able to put something together, but it was way harder to do than if I wrote out personality traits. Now, of course, DMs out there, this isn't necessary for every NPC, but for player characters, this is something you might want to consider. Beyond just the backstory, understanding the personality of your character is incredibly important to playing them. It's really hard to roleplay a character when their personality traits aren't down pat. Think of things that make a character happy, things that annoy them, things that make them upset, things that they enjoy, quirks that they have. That final one is really important for making a memorable character. Basically, when you understand your character, it is much, much, much easier to play them. Of course, there are other obstacles beyond just understanding your character, such as being nervous or not knowing when to speak up or not knowing what to say. Well, for my next piece of advice, bouncing off of other players can be really, really helpful for your roleplay. So, what do I mean by this? Well, once you understand your character and you know what they're about, try to understand the other characters in your party. If you're a DM writing an NPC, the same principles apply. Look at the traits that your fellow party members have built into their characters, and then try to associate those traits with your character. So, for example, if another player in the party has a character who really likes competition, is a very competitive person, while your character is a similar way. You two can bounce off each other, have friendly competitions of strength or intelligence, giving you an in roleplay. It's not just personality traits. If you're a DM who's going to write a recurring NPC, that NPC has the interest of baking, you could associate that with a member of the player party that also has an interest in baking and bounce those characters. Building associations with the party is really important, and they don't just need to be coincidences too. You can plan these things out, especially DMs. You can really plan NPCs to have connections with other characters to build interesting roleplay. If you're a DM who wants to encourage roleplay in your players, this is a great way to do it. If you're a player who's looking for an in, using the yes and method of improv is also a great way to do it. What do I mean by that? Well, if you're unfamiliar with impromptu or improv acting, the yes and method basically means that when a character proposes something, you don't shut it down. You continue the conversation. That might seem very basic, but it is something that a lot of people do subconsciously. They shut down the interaction before it has a chance to reach its conclusion. For example, if I ask a player in character, "How was the day today?" and they just say, "It was good," then that kind of just took the conversation nowhere. It's a very basic and simplistic example, but it's a good one, and it illustrates that instead of saying just, "It was good," the player could instead go over what happened in the day and spark a conversation with that NPC. They're basically doing a yes and to continue the interaction. Take this clip from Critical Role between Sam Riegel and Ashley Johnson. In this clip, both characters / players have multiple opportunities to drop the conversation, but they don't, and it results in a hilarious exchange. I can't play the entire clip, but here's a little bit of an excerpt just to show you what I'm talking about. For context, the two characters are discussing which member of their party could possibly have stolen Sam Riegel's character's flask. Earlier in the conversation, Not, Sam Riegel's character, accidentally revealed that one of the other characters killed his whole family, information that was brand new to the other member of this conversation, Yasha, played by Ashley Johnson. And the ensuing conversation is just great. Again, both players could just move along and not pay attention to this detail. Instead, they spur on interesting roleplay by bouncing off of each other.
Yeah, but I don't think she would do such a thing.
I don't think so. She's sweet. She's sweet.
What do you mean Caleb killed his whole family?
It's a figure of speech where I'm from. it's like.
What does the figure of speech mean? Yeah. Like, how would you use it in a sentence?
Do you have that money I owe you? Oh, no, I don't have it yet. I killed my whole family. I'll have it for you next week. It's just sort of like a general like, drat. That sort of a thing.
Also for you, it's like, I don't have my flask. I've killed my whole family.
Yeah. It's a figure of
frustration.
This exchange continues on for a while, and while you should make sure that you do not overdo it and talk over the rest of the group and spotlight hog, doing something like this, bouncing off of another player, is a great way to drive interesting roleplay in your games. While we're at it, another thing that you can do while you're writing connections between characters or practicing bouncing off of players with a yes and impromptu, another thing you can do is observe and learn from other players and the DM. If you're someone who's inexperienced with impromptu acting, inexperienced with role-playing, that is okay. Everyone starts somewhere. So If you want to get better, a really great way to do that is to observe the players at the table who are good at roleplay, who are passionate about playing their characters. Learn from them. The people sitting around you at your table or in the call with you at your game, they are your greatest resource. You are playing this game for hours per week. There is no better place to learn a new skill. So utilize the players around you to learn this skill, because that's what role-playing is. It's a skill you build like any other. And learning from others is a great way to build your skills in RP. Okay, but how can you bounce off of other players if you're nervous around them? That is completely reasonable. Putting yourself out there in D&D role-playing can be, well, intimidating. Playing a character can be hard. Slipping into a character can feel weird, and it absolutely feels weird. It's silly. I mean, it is silly. Even the cast of Critical Role, professional voice actors, acknowledge the fact that at first it felt silly. But here's the thing. You're all being silly together. They're not there to judge you. The players, the DM, everyone is there to have fun. So don't be afraid. Just get out there. Whenever I do public speaking, D&D, a speech, whatever, I'm always nervous before I step into my element. Once I'm on stage and I have the eyes of the audience, or once I'm behind my screen and my players are at attention, I'm in my element. It feels right. And I guarantee, after a little bit of practice, it will take a while. It took me a while. It will feel right for you too. I don't know how to describe it. It's not a process. It just takes time. But once you get there, it is the best feeling in the world. Trust me. Sorry if that point was a little vague, but I want to end this off with something just more hopeful. Look, you don't need to be good at roleplay. D&D isn't a job. You're not being judged, like I said before. I find that the reason a lot of people don't roleplay is because they're nervous. They don't want to make a mistake. They don't want to metagame. They don't want to be bad at voice acting. They don't want to be bad at roleplaying. And that fear of being bad results in them just not doing it at all. Which is, well, relatable, honestly. I'm the same way with a lot of things. And it took me a while to get into it too. It's okay to not be good at roleplaying. This is a game at its core. I mean, not just at its core, I mean, that's what this is. A role-playing game, not a role-playing competition. Everyone's here to have fun, not judge you. And besides, even if you think you are bad, what better way to get better than 4-hour sessions on a weekly basis? That's more practice than most people get at any skill. If you want to get better at roleplay, you need to try it. But don't be so afraid that you don't do anything at all. You should be RPing your character not out of some obligation or competitive, judgmental competition, but because you want to experience that fun of slipping into a character and having a collaborative storytelling experience with your friends. Alright, that is going to wrap it up for today. If you guys enjoyed this episode of Tabletop Tavern Tips, then please do hit the like button. If you want to see more episodes of this series, as well as my other series, RPG Horror Stories, then please do hit that subscribe button and subscribe to Crispy's Tavern for more videos. And finally, if you want to leave your own thoughts or advice, then go down to the comments down below. In essence, like, comment, subscribe. I will see you all next time. Farewell.